Bryan Show. Well, what the hell is wrong with people, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out. It's one of my New Year's resolutions. You guys, first of all, you guys know we're no longer the 50 states of America, right? Oh no, we're now the 50 states of America. That's how the rest of the world sees us now. The batshit crazy 50 states of America. I mean, how can Republicans call themselves with a straight face the Family Values Party after having seen and heard all the obviously corrupt, immoral, racist, dishonest shit coming out of his mouth on a daily basis when he was campaigning, and thought to themselves as the Family Values Party, I like that guy. Let's elect that guy to the highest office of our land. Apparently it's a family value to brag about grabbing women by the pussy because you're famous, you can get away with it. Apparently it's a family value to pay off multiple porn stars in order to hide multiple sexual affairs from your wife, the kids, and the rest of the country. Apparently it's a family value to denigrate wounded prisoner of war hero Senator John McCain, saying, well, he's no hero. I like soldiers who don't get caught and go to prisoner of war camps. And you didn't even serve with your dubious claim of having bone spurs, you know. Apparently it's a family value to sexualize your own daughter, you know. Two interviews on television, Google it, you'll find them. Trump, and one of them says, oh, Ivanka, she's so hot. If she wasn't my daughter, I'd definitely be dating her. And another one, he's asked what interests they share in common. And Trump says, well, I'd say probably sex, right, Ivanka? Oh my God, apparently it's a family value to take little children away from their immigrant families at the border as refugees, and not only that, but then place them in cages like animals. Would Jesus do that? Apparently so. Apparently it's a family values party supporting it. You know, what the hell? We all saw this stuff in living color. It was no secret when he was campaigning. Which party couldn't get to the polls fast enough to elect this piece of shit? The Family Values Party, the family of the evangelical Christians, you know, more like the hypocritical values party. Trump needs to lie like we need oxygen in order for him to survive. I'm not saying he doesn't need oxygen. He needs the oxygen in order to lie, okay? What the hell has happened to this country? At least about a third of it, as best I can tell. And I have to say, reality television is largely to blame. This mind-blowingly ignorant reality TV they keep cramming down our throats, and here we have this unfit reality TV show host elected to the highest office of our land. Speaking of reality TV, don't you guys miss Steve Irwin? God, I miss Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter. See, that's when reality TV was at its ultimate best. It's at its peak, and that was before it became a coined term, too. You know, Steve Irwin risking his life every day molesting animals for our entertainment. You know, nobody else could do it like Steve Irwin. You know, nobody else could get away with sticking their finger up the ass of a 10-foot alligator, you know, and give it a rectal exam for children on primetime television and get away with it not only with the alligator, but with PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, because they were always cool with anything Steve Irwin did with the animals. There's always like, well, you know, He clearly loves animals, and besides, we've seen worse on Sesame Street with how they treat Big Bird, you know, and I think the alligator probably had it coming anyway. But I miss Steve Irwin. I'm always reminded of Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter, anytime I go home to visit my fundamentalist religious family in Florida, because it's always like an episode of The Crocodile Hunter. It's always like, shh, now kids, don't try this at home. The only reason I can do this is because of my many years of experience dealing with other scary creatures like the Egyptian cobra and the Nile crocodile and the cast of Duck Dynasty, but I digress. I'm about to get up close and personal with a creature even scarier than that, the Florida Trump-supporting Southern Baptist. Now kids, like I said, don't try this at home. The only reason I can do this is because right now, I know they can't see me coming. You see, that's because the Florida Trump-supporting Southern Baptist is a distant cousin of the African ostrich. Now, you know how the ostrich likes to bury his head in the sand, right, kids? Well, you see, the Florida Trump-supporting Southern Baptist has a similar weird habit, except they like to keep their heads buried way the f*** up their ass. All right, stick around. We got a great show planned for you. Please, no channel surfing. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning into the program. I'm Connie Bryan, and you're watching The Connie Bryan Show. Okay, let's get to it. We've got a really great program for you tonight. Special guest going to be here with me live in the studio coming up. You don't want to miss it. The owner of Sacramento's The Comedy Spot is going to be right here with me on the show. So make sure you stick around for that. It's going to be a great interview. But this is the part of the show that I like to catch you up on some stories I've been keeping track of in the news. So let's get right to it. From the New York Times, recently featured in the Sacramento Bee, entitled Uber's Driverless Cars Return to the Road After Crash. Now the title should say after fatal crash. It says Uber's autonomous vehicles returned to public roads on Thursday, only 9 months after one of its self-driving cars killed a pedestrian in Arizona. This is just crazy, folks. A car with no driver ran over a woman, and people were surprised about it. And it's back. Now they're back on their... Look, that woman who got run over may not have seen that coming, the driver, but the rest of us should have been able to see that situation coming. Who is approving this un-American communist driverless car bullshit? I've said this before and I'll say it again. Americans drive, okay? You know, what does it say in the Declaration of Independence? The pursuit of happiness, right? They're talking about driving, you know? Who are you mindless sheep who are dumb enough to even want to get into one of these death traps in the first place and leave your life in the hands of a computer program at the wheel? Here's the deal. The only way Uber should be allowed to test these driverless cars on our public roads is if they're forced to strap one of their company executives to both front and rear bumpers while it's in operation, okay? One of their executives has to be strapped to the front bumper and the rear bumper anytime it's in motion. This way, they are the first ones to be killed when their dumb robot car crashes into anything. Or, get this, maybe a bad driver, crashes into them because there was no defensive driver at the wheel to see that coming. Just the stupid executive strapped to the hood, screaming, "Oh my God," as he gets smashed. Didn't he wish he was behind the wheel at that point to avoid the crash, is my point. When their life depends on it, then we'll see how much they really believe in an autonomous car run entirely by a computer software program and a robot sensor. And you people who are dumb enough to hire a driverless Uber car and you get killed someday when someone runs a red light at your intersection, you need to accept the fact that, the rest of us are not really going to be mourning your death at your funeral. We may fake it a little bit, but we may pretend, but we'll be whispering to each other how you just proved Darwin's theory about evolution, thinning out the giant Uber idiots from the rest of the American driving herd, All right, take a look at this story here by Madeline Ashmoon of the Sacramento Bee, entitled League Backs Bill Limiting Full Contact Practices for Use. It says young football players would be restricted to only 2 full contact practices each week if California lawmakers approve this bill aimed at protecting children from brain injuries. Well, of course, that makes perfect sense, right? If you're gonna keep your boy from becoming a sissy, of course he has to play football, right? Otherwise, if he doesn't play football, the next thing you know, he'll be wanting to join the cheerleading squad, right? Or worse than that, the swim team, like some kind of communist. So football practices? Who the hell cares about practices anyway? If you're going to subject your little 9-year-old and his young developing brain to a childhood full of the possibilities he may be hospitalized with a permanent traumatic brain injury from playing the sport, it damn sure better mean something, right? Something you can rationalize to your friends, like he did it scoring the winning touchdown in a real official game. This is America. Practice? And not some meaningless after-school practice. Otherwise, what a wasted life that would be, right? You'd look like such a bad parent if it just happened in a practice. Just have them play flag football. That's fine. That's enough. All right, take a look at this story by Michael McGough of the Sacramento Bee, entitled Meteor, flag football, that's gay. You know, I can just hear these idiots using that term. It's a good flag. No, it's not. It's perfectly fine. Still thinking about putting kids in such harm's way with that sport when their brains are developing. All right, take a look at this interesting story by Michael McGough of the Sacramento Bee entitled Meteor, Not Aliens, Likely Caused Bright Light Seen in Evening Sky. Recently here in Sacramento, many of us witnessed a very strange, unidentified flying object in the early evening sky. I myself was even stopped in my tracks when I saw it on my way to read the paper at a local Starbucks. Next day, experts tried to tell us it was just a meteor, but you know, there's one little problem with that story. If you look closely at the picture here, a meteor does not fly in a tight circle, leaving a trail that makes a tight circle. Look at this almost perfect circle from the trail of this UFO. Meteors travel, of course, in a relatively straight line. They don't form geometric shapes in the sky. See, this is why Ancient Aliens, that show on cable, is so popular right now. It's not that we all thought initially that this was an alien spaceship that we were witnessing, but as soon as it travels in a circle and then experts are trotted out to tell us all that it was just a meteor, see, that's when people start to wonder what the F you guys are trying to hide. So, you know, tell us it was a stoned Elon Musk again, and yet another test of his BFR rocket. You know, his big rocket. I'm not saying the F word here just because I want to. Elon has admitted that's exactly what the initials BFR on his rocket stand for, the big rocket. Can you believe, who's going to ride in that thing with a name like that? He was hitting the bomb when he came up with that name. Jeez. Tell us it was a drunk skywriting pilot for mattress firm, okay? And he was so drunk he couldn't spell the word sail. We'll believe either of those things, but don't try to tell us it was a meteor flying in a tight circle if you don't want us to think it was probably a freaking alien. And last but not least, take a look at this story here by David Crary of the Associated Press, recently featured in the Sacramento Bee, entitled Boy Scouts Won't Confirm Report on Bankruptcy. It says the Boy Scouts of America are exploring all options to address serious financial challenges right now, but they will neither confirm nor deny a recent Wall Street Journal report that said they may seek bankruptcy to get protection in the face of declining membership. A spokesman for the Boy Scouts said, "We admit we are really scrambling right now to find an effective fundraising strategy, and fast." And you know what that means? Yes, that's right. We're going to have to start competing with the Girl Scouts and start selling Boy Scout cookies. So all I can say in retrospect is, it's a good thing we decided to lift that ban on the Gay Scouts, the Gay Scout leaders a few years back. So at least now we have some members who actually know how to bake. Actually, you know what? We've decided, screw it. We've decided we're going to start letting the girls in too. We're changing our name from Boy Scouts of America to just the Scouts of America, and we're going to welcome any Girl Scouts who want to defect and join the Boy Scouts, but only on one condition. You have to bring some of those delicious cookie recipes of yours if you want in. And the first one of you who defects, we know you guys want to be Eagle Scouts, all right? You don't get to do that in the Girl Scout. Okay, you want to be Eagle Scouts? The first one of you to defect and bring us the coveted chocolate mint recipe, you won't have to learn how to tie all kinds of boring knots or make fire from a couple of sticks. You get to skip all of that, and we'll put you right to the top of the list and make you an automatic Eagle Scout. And you probably thought I was joking about that. Some of you may know this, but I wasn't joking. That part about them changing their name to Scouts of America, it was just reported by NPR. In February of 2019, they're officially changing their name. They're going to, in order to allow girls into the Boy Scouts. So, and you heard it here. I broke the news. You know they're not just doing that willy-nilly. They're doing that to get those recipes. Thanks for tuning into the show. You're watching The Connie Bryan Show, and stick around. We've got a great interview coming up. You don't want to miss it. Brian Crall, the owner of Sacramento's The Comedy Spot, is going to be right here with me in the studio. So so please, no channel surfing. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Connie Bryan. You're watching The Connie Bryan Show, and I have a very special guest with me tonight, right here in the studio, Brian Crall, comedian and owner of the Comedy Spot in Sacramento. So excited to have you with me here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's awesome.
So how in the world did you get the idea to start a comedy club? Were you interested in comedy at an early age, or?
No. No. Not at all. Nope. I went to college. I was going to be a business major, and then about halfway through, I hated it and had no friends, and so I dropped out and became a theater major.
Okay.
And then
at Sac State.
At Sac State, yeah.
We were doing a pre-interview earlier, and you were telling me about how you took theater at Sac State.
Yeah.
And tell us how that translated into you doing comedy.
Yeah, it was so there was never any comedy on the horizon. It was just. First it was be an accountant, and then it was be an actor, and then it was go down to LA and be successful.
That was the plan.
That was the plan. And me and a buddy named John Ketching, we went to a bar, and we were having a beer, and I was like contemplating life and what to do next. And he said, you should do sketch comedy.
He just out of the blue?
Out of the blue. And I was like, he had directed me in a comedy play.
Okay.
And so I don't know if he
saw potential.
Maybe, or he was just drunk, but he was just like, you should do sketch comedy. And I was like, all right. So we did.
Okay.
And then I was like, hey man, I'm starting to put together this sketch group. You're in, right? And he's like, no. He
was like, I'm not doing it.
No, he had no intention of being part of the group. But that one conversation has led to everything else.
It was the catalyst.
Yeah.
And it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to have a successful comedy club, and you've done it. You started it in 2005?
2005. So I started doing comedy in Sacramento in 2001. And we were going from bar to bar to bar to bar, and
it's hard to do a comedy in bars.
Sucks because
drunks giving you a hard time.
Right.
They're not listening.
We would do a show next to a koi pond, and it was so loud we would have to unplug the koi pond, and then one person was designated to plug the koi pond back in.
Koi pond was making too much noise.
Yeah, because
I didn't anticipate. I could hear drunks with the fish.
It had a fountain, and it made all this noise, and so because of that, and the drunks and everything else. We wanted to have a space that we could control. And there was we did primarily sketch and improv. There were no sketch and improv places in town.
Okay.
We even went to Punchline at one point, and we're like...
Punchline is another big club here in Sacramento.
Great club in Sacramento. Yeah. Great stand-up club.
Mostly, if not entirely, stand-up.
Stand-up. And so when we went over there, we're like, hey, do you think we could get there? No. Like, no, you can't perform here.
Because you're focusing on, at the Comedy Spot, at the time, anyway, early on, it was pretty much entirely... sketch and improv.
All sketch, and then we brought on improv, and then we eventually brought on stand-up.
That's the stand-up now.
So now we do all three.
All three. And you teach.
And we
pioneered in Sacramento teaching classes.
Yeah, so in comedy clubs all over the United States, they have clubs that they also teach improv and stand-up and sketch. But it wasn't happening here in Sacramento. When we learned by doing. We learned by just putting up a show and having it suck, and then learning from that suck, and then doing it again and getting better at it, and then, but there weren't any classes. And so when we opened up the club, we started doing improv classes, and eventually started doing sketch classes, and then eventually stand-up classes, and that's what we still do today.
So if anybody out there is interested, they certainly can look up the Comedy Spot and see about enrolling in some classes. We can't do a call to action,
no.
but we can mention that you do provide that.
It's around.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, you don't have to take a class to get into comedy. You can go and start to do it. Yeah. Right. I think all we're selling is we're just giving you a nice place to launch from, you know, and we're trying to tell you about all the stupid shit. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
About all the stupid stuff we did at the beginning, and try to avoid the stupid stuff. You don't have to go through all that. You know? And so, and that's my favorite part of the job. I love teaching improv classes and sketch classes. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I want to touch on that too. Maybe you can give us an example. I wanted to, before that though, just say, with me, my influences early on in my life as a kid include Jonathan Winters, Johnny Carson, of course, David Letterman, my big heroes, right? Then later on, people like Ellen DeGeneres was a big influence on me. Jerry Seinfeld, huge because of how well they wrote and just drew you into their act.
Right.
People want to make fun of Seinfeld maybe because it's observational, but observation is what we need as comics about what's right.
Right.
And then, of course, more currently, people like Bill Maher, big influence. How about you? What are some of your big influences?
Yeah, and so I never had an interest in comedy. So when I was a kid, but I still liked all these comedians. So for me, I loved Eddie Murphy when I was a kid.
I just think it's amazing. You're saying you didn't have an interest in it, and look where you've realized how you love it, and you have the interest. But early on, it's not like you can say, I just had this driving comedy interest.
Yeah, I've heard interviews with people where like I was 10 years old and I would do sketches and stuff like that. I used to have magic shows, like my brother and I would do, but I was never thinking I'm going to grow up and be a comedian. Right. So I used to watch, the Eddie Murphy, even, Bill Cosby was really, influential when I was, obviously now I wouldn't go down his path.
Exactly, with all the riffy stuff and
But at the time, and then later on, like I didn't even like Saturday Night Live for a long time.
Yeah, well, there was times when I can't fault you for that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, good, yeah.
But
I started like really getting into like Bill Murray, and Gilda Radner, and then now Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are a big influence on me.
And you do some of that at the Comedy Spot. You do that kind of thing with sketch comedy every weekend.
It just depends, and we have a lot of different shows that float in. So we have. On Fridays and Saturdays, we have 3 time slots. At 8 p.m., which is a featured, a headlining at 9, and then an experimental at 10:30. And from week to week, those change.
Okay.
So, but you can see improv, stand-up, or sketch during those 3 time slots.
Are you doing like SNL? Are you really hammering the Trump thing? Do you have anybody doing Alec Baldwin's like a similar impersonation of Trump?
We have a guy named Charlie Lemke that does the best Trump impression I've ever seen in my entire life.
So people might encounter a little bit of political stuff, but not necessarily always.
We live in Midtown. Yeah, we are the center of all things liberal in Sacramento. So I think that we definitely trend. I don't think there's a lot of Trump fans at our club. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But we don't sit around there and bash him all day long either. If it comes up, it comes up.
It comes up.
Yeah, exactly. But we do sketch comedy like Saturday Night Live. So I'm in 3 shows right now. I'm in 2 improv shows and a sketch show called the Friday Show, and we do a monthly sketch comedy show, which is great. It's my most favorite sketch comedy show I've ever been.
And you were explaining that you get a lot of your material from the audience. They'll give you ideas, and then you'll run with that.
Like our improv shows, like I do a show called Anti-Cooperation League, and we'll interview a little bit of the audience, and then we'll interview a special guest. And we're just gathering information to do improvised scenes for the rest of the show. And so whatever they bring up is what we usually do content about. Okay. So like last night was a really good example of I interviewed somebody out in the crowd, and they were talking about how they met their wife at a hospital. Okay. And I said, and I was like, oh, did you work there? And he goes, no, I was just there. And I was like, what, to find a date? Like, that's a weird thing,
A singles hospital or something.
Yeah. So, but then we ended up doing a scene in the show that was kind of that title. Where somebody was there just to pick up on somebody, and because they couldn't move out of a bed, they were a very attentive audience.
Yeah, you've tried Match.com. Now come and try hospital.
I even said that.
Hospital hookup.
I even said like Tinder wasn't good enough for you. You had to go to the hospital, and
right.
So it became a whole gag on the show. But that's what's really great is. I think audience members are really stoked when they see this little conversation all of a sudden become a 2 or 3 minute idea played on stage. So,
but can you start a comedy club? Can you run one successfully and not be funny? You think?
I mean, maybe.
You know what? It helps to be funny.
But even when we started, like I said, I'm not kidding. Like we were pretty good, but we weren't great. I mean, we put on some garbage. We put on some offensive garbage sometimes. And I think part of it is figuring out that, you don't have to be crude. Yeah. Part of it is figuring out how to write and be a better performer.
Right, that's the key.
And the more you do it, the better you get at that. And so at this point, you know what's really cool, though? Is I like it when people never give up on learning, too.
Yes.
Like I'm 43, and I'm in an improv show where we sing. It's a completely improvised musical.
Wow, okay.
And everything, the storyline, the music, everything. And I can't sing very well, but I'm doing that show. I'm afraid of that show. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I continue to learn even at
A healthy
43.
fear is good when you go on stage. It means you care. It means you care.
That just
All right?
scares the crap out of me.
What's the hardest thing of running a comedy club? Being the owner of a comedy club, what's been the hardest thing for
Well,
you?
we're not a traditional club, so we don't do 2-drink minimums or.
You don't. You don't even have a 2-drink.
No, we don't do a 2-drink. We have a beer bar.
Even the Catholic Eucharist has a 2-drink minimum.
Yes, I don't. I don't like
Wow.
it. I want people to be there for the comedy. I don't want a bunch of
That's
drunks in the audience.
great. And you try to pay, I understand, you try to, the people who feature and stuff, you actually are trying to, because it's such a hard thing in this business and for comics to get paid, so that's to your credit that you're...
Well, a lot of theaters like ours don't pay
Yeah.
improv talent or sketch talent. Like even in LA, big markets, they don't pay them. But most of our people who are on 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. shows are paid at this point.
What's been the hardest thing as a comedy club owner?
It's because I don't have the traditional stuff to deal with. It's a lot. Everyone's kind of my family, right? Like I'm really close to everybody, and I think just dealing with all the different personalities.
Yes.
Like you have, I mean, comedians are artists.
Yeah.
They're committed to their work, and so they're passionate. And so if you tell them maybe they're not cutting it, they get offended by that.
It's hard. It's like herding cats, maybe, as they say.
It's definitely like herding cats. And every I don't know, 5 times during my career, I've gotten a letter that says I'm the worst person in the whole wide world. You know, and it's usually people I've been very close to. But I know...
You don't want to hurt people's feelings.
But I don't hurt... I mean, I don't go to my job saying, like, I'm going to make this person feel terrible today. It's a hard business, and people are very close to what they do. And so me telling you that maybe your show isn't hacking it is not anything that you like to hear.
It's not... okay.
And I'm not being mean.
Is that what you're saying?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, no, you're okay.
Tell me what you tell me.
No,
You tell me,
okay.
right? You would tell me if it's...
I think that when I was younger, it was really hard to tell people that you didn't like their show, right? But as you get older, you're like, listen, this isn't working. Like, we need to do something to fix this thing.
Right.
So you're fine. I'd tell you if I didn't like your show.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good. You're good.
So we only have about 30 seconds. Real quickly, just tell them what you have happening. Some content. You have some competitions.
We have stuff going on all year long. We have shows. 6 nights a week. We have big events all year long. An all women's weekend coming up, the Sacramento stand-up competition, Sacramento Comedy Festival, an event called Weird, Strange, Bizarre.
Fantastic. So
all stuff happening.
Big stuff this year.
Yeah.
Competitions and everything. People can go to
SacComedySpot.com and check out all the information about shows and classes.
Fantastic. Brian, it's been a pleasure having you.
Pleasure.
Hope we can do it again.
I would love to. That's went by really fast.
It did. Keep up the great work.
Okay,
all right?
thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.